The morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet street in West London, where parents dropped off their children at one of Britain's most exclusive private schools. Behind perfectly manicured hedges and wrought iron gates, expensive cars lined up in orderly fashion, their occupants following the same routine they had practiced for months. But on this particular Tuesday morning in March 2024, something was different. A man with a telephoto lens sat hunched in a beaten-up sedan, his camera trained on the school entrance with predatory focus. What he captured in those few minutes would send shockwaves through Kensington Palace, trigger an immediate security review, and remind the world that even the most innocent members of the royal family are never truly safe from those who would exploit their privacy for profit. The photographs he took that morning would never see the light of day, but the incident would change everything about how the youngest Cambridge prince attended school. This is the story of how a single paparazzi's reckless pursuit of the perfect shot nearly compromised the safety of 5-year-old Prince Louis, and how the swift response from royal protection officers, school administrators, and legal teams created new precedent for protecting royal children in an age where privacy has become a luxury few can afford. Marcus Chun had been a freelance photographer for 12 years, but the past 18 months had been particularly brutal. The pandemic had decimated the entertainment industry, red carpet events had virtually disappeared, and celebrity sightings had become as rare as finding parking in central London. His savings had dwindled to almost nothing. His landlord was threatening eviction, and his girlfriend had moved out the previous month, taking with her not just her belongings, but also his last shred of confidence. Sitting in his cramped Vauxhall Corsa on that crisp March morning, Marcus clutched his Canon 5D Mark IV like a lifeline. The camera represented his last significant asset, worth more than his car and possibly more than everything else he owned combined. He had received a tip from a contact who claimed to know the exact timing of when Prince Louis would be dropped off at Thomas's Battersea. The same contact had assured him that security was lighter in the mornings, that the royal protection officers had become complacent with routine, and that a good telephoto shot of the young prince could fetch anywhere from £10,000 to £50,000 from the right publication. The school itself was an imposing Victorian building that had educated the children of London's elite for over a century. Its red brick facade and tall windows spoke of tradition and privilege, while the carefully maintained grounds suggested the kind of institution where tuition fees could buy a small house elsewhere in the country. Thomas's Battersea had become synonymous with royal education ever since Prince George had enrolled there in 2017, followed by Princess Charlotte 2 years later. Now, with Prince Louis having joined his siblings at the school, it had become one of the most photographed educational institutions in Britain. Marcus had arrived at 5:30 in the morning, parking his car strategically between a luxury SUV and a Range Rover, hoping to blend in with the affluent neighborhood. He had studied the school's layout obsessively, memorizing every entrance, every potential sight line, and every security camera placement. His research had revealed that the main entrance faced a quiet residential street where parents typically dropped off their children between 8 and 8:30 in the morning. The school had strict policies about photography, and signs were posted clearly warning against unauthorized images. But Marcus had convinced himself that he would be operating from a public street, technically making his activities legal. What Marcus hadn't anticipated was the level of coordination between the school's private security, the local police, and the Royal Protection Unit. Thomas's Battersea had implemented sophisticated surveillance systems following the enrollment of the Cambridge children, with facial recognition software, license plate readers, and a direct communication line to Scotland Yard. Every vehicle that lingered too long near the school grounds was automatically flagged, and every individual who appeared to be conducting surveillance was immediately investigated. Detective Inspector Sarah Williams had been monitoring the area since 6 in the morning, positioned in an unmarked police vehicle 3 blocks away from the school. As the head of the Metropolitan Police's Royal Protection Coordination Unit, she had developed an almost supernatural ability to spot potential threats. Her team had noticed Marcus's vehicle the moment he had parked, and they had been running background checks on both him and his car registration while he sat unaware, adjusting his camera settings and rehearsing his approach. The first parents began arriving shortly before 8 o'clock, their expensive vehicles gliding silently through the morning traffic. Marcus watched through his viewfinder as children emerged from back seats, their small hands clutching book bags and lunch boxes, their faces bright with the particular energy that only children possess in the morning. He felt a twinge of guilt as he watched these innocent scenes, but the weight of his financial desperation pushed such feelings aside. He needed this shot, needed the money it would bring, needed to believe that his career as a photographer still had some future. At 8:15, a convoy of 3 vehicles approached the school at a measured pace. The lead car was a standard police escort vehicle, followed by a dark Range Rover with tinted windows, and, finally, a backup security vehicle. Marcus's heart began to race as he realized this was likely the royal family's arrival. He raised his camera, adjusted his focus, and waited for the perfect moment when the car door would open and Prince Louis would emerge. The Range Rover pulled up to the school entrance with practiced precision, positioning itself so that the passenger side door opened directly adjacent to the school's main gate. Marcus could see movement inside the vehicle, shadows shifting behind the tinted glass, and he held his breath as he prepared to capture what he hoped would be his career-saving photograph. However, what Marcus couldn't see was the coordinated response that had already been set in motion. Detective Inspector Williams had given the signal to her team the moment the royal convoy had come into view, and plainclothes officers were already moving to surround Marcus's vehicle. The school's headmaster, Mrs. Patricia Thornton, had been alerted and was coordinating with the royal protection officers to ensure Prince Louis's safety while also documenting the security breach for future reference. The car door opened, and Marcus pressed the shutter button repeatedly, his camera firing off shot after shot as a small figure emerged from the vehicle. Through his telephoto lens, he could see Prince Louis clearly, the 5-year-old looking remarkably composed for someone so young. His school uniform impeccable, his small hand reaching up to hold what appeared to be his mother's hand, though Marcus couldn't see her clearly from his angle. It was in that moment of focused concentration, as Marcus was reviewing the images on his camera's LCD screen to ensure he had captured usable shots, that he became aware of movement around his vehicle. A sharp tap on his passenger side window caused him to look up, and he found himself staring at the serious face of a man in a dark suit who was holding up a police identification card. Detective Constable James Morrison had approached the vehicle from the blind spot, moving with the kind of quiet efficiency that came from years of specialized training. Behind him, Marcus could now see 2 additional officers, and he realized with growing alarm that his car was effectively surrounded. The camera suddenly felt impossibly heavy in his hands, and the images he had just captured seemed to burn with incriminating evidence. The officer gestured for Marcus to lower his window, and with trembling fingers he complied. The morning air that rushed into the car carried with it the scent of expensive perfume and fresh coffee from the nearby cafes, a stark contrast to the growing sense of dread that was settling over Marcus like a heavy blanket. "Good morning, sir," Detective Constable Morrison said, his tone professional but unmistakably firm. "I'm going to need to see some identification, and I'll also need you to explain what you're doing here this morning." Marcus fumbled for his wallet, his photographer's instincts warring with his growing awareness that he had made a serious mistake. The street that had seemed so public and accessible just minutes before now felt like a carefully controlled environment where his presence had been noted, analyzed, and found wanting. As he handed over his driving license, he caught a glimpse of the school entrance where the royal convoy was completing its drop-off routine with military precision. The young prince safely delivered to his classroom, while Marcus sat trapped in a web of his own making. The realization hit him like a physical blow that this was not just about taking unauthorized photographs. This was about the security of a child who happened to be 5th in line to the British throne, a child whose safety was considered a matter of national importance. The images on his camera, which he had thought of as his financial salvation. Detective Constable Morrison's partner, Detective Constable Lisa Chun, approached from the driver's side of the vehicle, carrying a tablet computer that Marcus suspected contained information about him that he would prefer to keep private. The two officers exchange a look that suggested they had worked together on similar situations before, and Marcus found himself wondering exactly how often incidents like this occurred and what had happened to the other photographers who had been caught in similar circumstances. As the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, casting shorter shadows across the quiet street, Marcus Chin sat his car, surrounded by police officers, clutching a camera full of images that he was beginning to suspect he would never be able to use, let alone sell. The school day was beginning normally for hundreds of children, including one small prince who had no idea that his simple walk from car to classroom had just triggered a security incident that would have far-reaching consequences for everyone involved. Detective Inspector Sarah Williams received the call from Detective Constable Morrison at exactly 8:23 a.m., just 8 minutes after the royal convoy had completed the school drop-off. The brevity of the message was typical of Morrison's efficient communication style, but the implications were anything but routine. A freelance photographer had been apprehended taking unauthorized images of Prince Louis during the school arrival, and the suspect was currently being detained for questioning. Williams closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility that came with any incident involving the royal family. Every decision she made in the next few hours would be scrutinized by multiple agencies, documented in reports that would reach the highest levels of government, and potentially influence security protocols for years to come. She had handled dozens of similar situations during her 15-year career in royal protection, but each one carried its own unique challenges and complications. The drive to Thomas's Battersea took Williams through some of London's most affluent neighborhoods, past Georgian townhouses that cost more than most people would earn in several lifetimes, and through streets lined with designer boutiques and exclusive restaurants. The irony was not lost on her that she was rushing to deal with a crime committed by someone desperately seeking money in one of the wealthiest areas of the city. When she arrived at the scene, Williams found Marcus Chun sitting in the back of an unmarked police vehicle, his camera equipment secured as evidence, his face pale with what appeared to be a combination of fear and disbelief. Through the vehicle's window, she could see him staring at his hands, occasionally shaking his head as if trying to wake up from a bad dream. His clothing was wrinkled, suggesting he had been in the same position for hours, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and mounting stress. Detective Constable Morrison approached Williams with a tablet containing Chin's preliminary information. Marcus Chun, 34 years old, had been working as a freelance photographer since 2012, specializing in celebrity and entertainment photography. His record showed no previous arrests, but there were several formal complaints filed by celebrities' representatives regarding aggressive paparazzi behavior. His financial situation appeared precarious, with recent credit checks showing significant debt and a history of late payments on his rent and car loan. What concerned Williams more than Chin's personal circumstances was the level of planning that had gone into this incident. The photographer had arrived hours before the school drop-off, had positioned himself with clear sight lines to the school entrance, and had equipment sophisticated enough to capture detailed images from a considerable distance. This wasn't an opportunistic encounter or a lucky coincidence. It was a calculated attempt to breach the security perimeter around a member of the royal family. Williams walked over to Chin's vehicle, which was still parked in the same spot where he had been apprehended. The car's interior told a story of financial struggle and professional desperation. Empty coffee cups filled the cup holders, energy bar wrappers littered the floor, and a smartphone with a cracked screen sat on the passenger seat, presumably containing the contact information for whoever had provided Chun with the tip about Prince Louis's school schedule. The camera equipment that had been seized from Chun was impressive in its sophistication and expensive enough to represent a significant investment for someone in his financial situation. The Canon 5D Mark IV was a professional-grade camera worth several £1,000s, and the telephoto lens attached to it was capable of capturing detailed images from hundreds of meters away. Williams made a mental note to have the technology team analyze the camera's memory cards and internal storage to determine exactly what Chun had photographed and whether there were any other royal family images stored on the device. Dr. Patricia Thornton, the headmaster of Thomas's Battersea, met Williams at the school's main entrance. Dr. Thornton was a formidable woman in her early 60s who had managed the school's transition from a traditional prep school to an institution that attracted international attention due to its royal students. She had developed strict protocols for handling media attention and security incidents, and her calm demeanor suggested that she had dealt with similar situations before. The school security office was located in the basement of the main building, accessed through a discreet entrance that most parents and students never noticed. The room was filled with monitors showing feeds from dozens of security cameras positioned throughout the school grounds and surrounding streets. Williams was impressed by the sophistication of the system, which included not just standard surveillance cameras, but also thermal imaging devices and motion sensors that could detect unusual activity even in low-light conditions. The security footage from that morning told a comprehensive story of Chen's activities. The cameras at first detected his vehicle at 5:47 a.m., more than 2 hours before the royal family's scheduled arrival. The footage showed Chen making several adjustments to his position, testing different angles with his camera, and apparently conducting reconnaissance on the school's security measures. What was particularly concerning was that the cameras had captured Chen taking photographs not just of the school entrance, but also of the security cameras themselves, suggesting that he was mapping the surveillance system for future reference. Thomas Mitchell, the school's head of security, had been monitoring the situation from the moment Chen's vehicle had been flagged by the automated surveillance system. Mitchell was a former Metropolitan Police officer who had specialized in counter-surveillance operations, and his trained eye had immediately recognized Chen's behavior as that of someone conducting organized reconnaissance rather than casual observation. The most damaging evidence against Chen came from the images stored on his camera and smartphone. The camera's memory card contained not just the photographs taken that morning, but also images from previous surveillance sessions near the school. The metadata embedded in the digital file showed that Chen had been photographing the school and its surroundings for at least 2 weeks, building a comprehensive intelligence picture of security procedures, timing, and vulnerabilities. Williams felt her jaw tighten as she reviewed the images on Mitchell's computer screen. Some of the photographs showed other children arriving at school, their faces clearly identifiable, their routines documented in detail that could be useful to anyone planning to target them or their families. This wasn't just about Prince Louis. It was about the systematic surveillance of dozens of children from wealthy and prominent families. The smartphone evidence was even more troubling. Chen's text messages revealed communications with several individuals who appear to be offering money for specific types of royal family photographs. The messages used coded language, but their meaning was clear enough to establish that Chen was part of a network of photographers and image brokers who specialized in unauthorized royal family content. One message thread was particularly concerning. Chen had been communicating with someone identified only as London Source, who claimed to have inside information about royal family movements and schedules. The messages suggested that this source had provided Chen with specific details about Prince Louis's school routine, including timing, vehicle descriptions, and security procedures. Williams immediately initiated a trace on the phone number associated with London Source, but she suspected that it would lead to a prepaid phone or a messaging service that would be difficult to track back to an actual individual. Professional paparazzi networks had evolved sophisticated methods for protecting their sources and maintaining anonymity in their communications. The legal implications of Chen's activities were complex and potentially serious. While photographing individuals in public spaces was generally legal in the United Kingdom, the circumstances of this case involved several aggravating factors. Chen had been conducting systematic surveillance of a school, had been photographing children without their parents' consent, and had been specifically targeting a member of the royal family in a way that could be interpreted as a security threat. Detective Constable Lisa Chen, who shared no relation to the photographer despite their common surname, had been assigned to interview Marcus Chen. She was a specialist in cases involving digital evidence and online harassment, and her experience with similar cases would be valuable in understanding the broader context of Chen's activities. The interview took place in a small conference room at the local police station, with Chen's lawyer present and the entire conversation being recorded for later analysis. Marcus Chun appeared exhausted and defeated, his earlier bravado replaced by a growing awareness of the seriousness of his situation. When asked about his motivations for photographing Prince Louis, Chin's responses revealed the desperate circumstances that had led him to make such a risky decision. He described months of declining income, mounting debts, and increasing pressure from creditors. The promise of a substantial payment for exclusive royal family photographs had seemed like his only chance to avoid financial ruin. Chin's description of his contact with London source provided valuable intelligence about the network of individuals who facilitate unauthorized royal photography. According to Chun, he had been approached through an encrypted messaging app by someone who claimed to have access to royal family schedules and security information. The source had demanded a significant upfront payment for the information, but had promised that exclusive photographs could be sold for enough money to solve Chin's financial problems. What emerged from the interview was a picture of a man who had been manipulated by individuals with more sophisticated knowledge of royal security procedures and media markets. Chin appeared to have been used as a disposable asset by people who understood that the risks of detection were high and that photographers like him could be easily replaced if they were caught. The investigation expanded beyond Chun himself to examine the broader network of individuals who had facilitated his activities. Williams coordinated with the Metropolitan Police's digital forensics team to analyze Chin's electronic devices and identify other members of the network. She also worked with telecommunications companies to trace the communications that had led to Chin's surveillance of the school. As the afternoon progressed, the scope of the investigation continued to grow. What had initially appeared to be the isolated actions of a desperate photographer was revealing itself to be part of a more organized effort to breach royal family security through the systematic exploitation of vulnerable individuals like Chun. The implications for Prince Louis's security were significant and immediate. The fact that Chun had been able to conduct weeks of surveillance without being detected suggested that there were gaps in the security perimeter around the school that needed to be addressed urgently. The involvement of inside sources with access to royal family schedules raised even more serious concerns about the integrity of the security apparatus designed to protect the royal family. Williams knew that her investigation was just beginning and that the decisions made in the next few days would have lasting consequences for everyone involved. Marcus Chun sat in custody, facing charges that could result in years in prison, while somewhere in London, the individuals who had manipulated him into taking such risks remained free to find their next vulnerable photographer willing to trade their freedom for a chance at financial salvation. The call reached Kensington Palace at 9:47 a.m., less than 90 minutes after Marcus Chun had been taken into custody. Private Secretary Simon Case answered his secure phone line while reviewing the morning's official correspondence, expecting another routine briefing about upcoming royal engagements. Instead, he found himself listening to Detective Inspector Williams deliver news that would reshape the royal family security protocols and thrust the issue of media privacy back in the national spotlight. Case had served as private secretary to the Prince and Princess of Wales for 3 years, during which he had developed an almost instinctive understanding of how to manage crises that threatened the family's privacy and security. His background in diplomatic service had prepared him for complex international negotiations, but nothing had quite prepared him for the unique challenges of protecting a young family that lived under constant public scrutiny while trying to maintain some semblance of normal childhood experiences for their 3 children. The immediate concern was determining what images Chun had captured and whether any of them pose an ongoing security risk. Case coordinated with the palace's security team to review the seized camera equipment and assess whether Chun had photographed anything that could compromise future security arrangements. The initial report was troubling. Chun had not only captured clear images of Prince Louis, but had also documented the timing and procedures used by the royal protection officers, information that could be valuable to anyone planning a more serious security breach. Case's next call was to Catherine, Princess of Wales, who was at that moment attending a charity event in South London, completely unaware that her youngest son had been the target of unauthorized surveillance. The conversation was brief and carefully worded, with Case providing enough information to ensure she understood the seriousness of the situation without causing unnecessary alarm. Catherine's immediate concern was for Lewis's emotional well-being and whether he had been aware of the photographer's activities. The palace's communications team, led by Director of Communications Amanda Foster, was already preparing for the media storm that would inevitably follow news of the incident. Foster had managed royal communications for over a decade, and she understood that the story would be particularly sensitive because it involved a young child and raised questions about the effectiveness of royal security measures. Her challenge was to provide enough information to satisfy public interest while protecting operational security details that could be exploited by future threats. Within hours of Chen's arrest, rumors about the incident began circulating on social media and among London's extensive network of royal reporters. The palace's policy was generally to avoid commenting on security matters, but the involvement of a child and the potential for speculation to spiral out of control made some form of official response necessary. Foster's statement was carefully crafted to acknowledge the incident without revealing sensitive details about security procedures or investigation findings. The statement read, "Kensington Palace is aware of an incident this morning involving unauthorized photography near Prince Louis's school. The matter has been reported to the appropriate authorities and is being investigated. The safety and privacy of all children, including members of the royal family, remains a priority." The statement was released simultaneously to all major news outlets, ensuring that no single publication could claim exclusive access to the story. However, Foster knew that the brief statement would only satisfy media curiosity temporarily, and that pressure for additional details would continue to mount as the story developed. The incident occurred at a particularly sensitive time for the royal family's relationship with the media. Recent years had seen increasing tensions between the palace and certain segments of the press, particularly regarding coverage of the younger members of the royal family. The Prince and Princess of Wales had been working to establish clear boundaries around their children's privacy while still fulfilling their public duties and maintaining the transparency that the public expected from the institution of monarchy. Legal proceedings against Chun began immediately, with the Crown Prosecution Service reviewing the evidence to determine what charges would be most appropriate. The case presented several complex legal questions about the boundaries between legitimate journalism, public interest, and the protection of children's privacy. Chen's lawyers argued that their client had been operating from a public street and had not technically trespassed on school property, while prosecutors maintained that his systematic surveillance of the school constituted harassment and posed a potential security threat. The Children's Commissioner for England, Dame Rachel de Souza, issued a statement expressing concern about the incident and calling for stronger protections for all children against unauthorized photography and surveillance. Her statement emphasized that the principles involved extended far beyond the royal family to include the thousands of children who attended schools across London and could potentially be targeted by individuals seeking to exploit their family's wealth or prominence. Thomas's Battersea found itself at the center of unwanted attention as parents began questioning whether the school's security measures were adequate to protect their children from similar incidents. Several parents contacted the school administration demanding meetings to discuss security protocols, while others began considering alternative schools that might offer better protection from media intrusion. Dr. Patricia Thornton held an emergency meeting with the school's board of governors to address the concerns raised by the incident and to review the institution's policies regarding media coverage and security. The meeting resulted in several immediate changes to school procedures, including enhanced surveillance of the surrounding streets during arrival and departure times, increased coordination with local police, and stricter enforcement of the school's no photography policies. The incident also prompted a broader review of security arrangements for all royal family members who attended public institutions. Prince George and Princess Charlotte, who were older and attended the same school, had their security details reviewed and enhanced, while procedures for other royal children attending schools and universities across the country were examined to identify potential vulnerabilities. Marcus Chun remained in custody while his lawyers worked to secure bail and prepare his defense. The photographer's case had attracted attention from civil liberties groups who argued that his treatment represented an excessive response to what they characterized as legitimate journalistic activity. However, child protection advocates countered that Chin's systematic surveillance of the school had crossed legal and ethical boundaries that warranted criminal prosecution. The financial investigation into Chin's activities revealed the economic pressures that had motivated his actions. Bank records showed that he had been facing eviction from his apartment and had accumulated significant debts from his failing photography business. Text messages recovered from his phone indicated that he had been promised payment of up to £50,000 for exclusive photographs of Prince Louis, a sum that would have resolved his immediate financial problems, but had ultimately led to his downfall. The search for London's source, the mysterious contact who had provided Chun with inside information about royal family movements, became a priority for the investigation team. Digital forensics experts worked to trace the encrypted communications, while intelligence analysts examined the information that had been provided to determine how it could have been obtained. The investigation suggested that the source had access to detailed information about royal family schedules and security procedures, raising serious concerns about potential security breaches within the royal protection system. International media outlets picked up the story, with newspapers and television networks from across Europe, North America, and Australia reporting on the incident. The story was particularly prominent in countries with their own royal families, where similar issues of privacy and security were ongoing concerns. The incident was cited as evidence of the continuing challenges faced by modern monarchies in balancing public access with personal privacy and security. Social media reaction to the incident was polarized, with some users expressing sympathy for Chin's financial desperation, while others condemned his actions as an unacceptable invasion of a child's privacy. The hashtag #ProtectRoyalChildren began trending on Twitter, with users sharing opinions about media coverage of royal family members and calling for stronger legal protections for children in public life. The incident had particular resonance because of its similarities to the media harassment that had characterized the final years of Princess Diana's life. Many commentators drew explicit comparisons between Chin's surveillance of Prince Louis and the aggressive paparazzi tactics that had contributed to the car crash that killed Diana in 1997. The comparisons added emotional weight to the story and increased public support for stronger measures to protect royal family members from media intrusion. Legal experts appeared on television programs and wrote newspaper columns analyzing the potential charges that Chun could face and the broader implications of the case for media law in the United Kingdom. Some argued that existing laws were adequate to address Chin's behavior, while others called for new legislation specifically designed to protect children from unauthorized photography and surveillance. The incident also highlighted the economic realities of modern freelance photography, with industry representatives acknowledging that financial pressures had driven many photographers to take increasingly desperate measures to secure sellable images. The decline of traditional media outlets and the rise of social media had created a market where exclusive photographs could command high prices, but had also increased competition and reduced the stability of photographers' incomes. As news of the incident spread, other schools with wealthy or prominent families among their student bodies began reviewing their own security procedures. Private schools across London reported increased inquiries from parents about photography policies and security measures, while some institutions hired additional security personnel or installed more sophisticated surveillance systems. The palace's security team worked closely with the Metropolitan Police to analyze the intelligence gathered from Chin's devices and communications. The investigation revealed that Chun had been part of a loosely organized network of photographers and information brokers who specialized in royal family surveillance. The network operated through encrypted messaging apps and used coded language to discuss targets, timing, and payment arrangements. The discovery of this network prompted a broader investigation into the illegal photography industry that surrounded the royal family. Detectives began identifying other photographers who had been operating similar surveillance operations, while intelligence analysts worked to map the financial relationships between photographers, information brokers, and the publications that ultimately purchased unauthorized images. As the day progressed, the incident continued to generate headlines and commentary, with each new development adding to the public's understanding of the challenges faced by the royal family in protecting their children's privacy and security. The story had evolved from a simple arrest to a complex examination of media ethics, child protection, and the ongoing evolution of royal security in the digital age. 3 weeks after Marcus Chen's arrest outside Thomas's Battersea. The full scope of the investigation had revealed a sophisticated network of unauthorized royal surveillance that stretched far beyond one desperate photographer with financial problems. Detective Inspector Sarah Williams sat in her office reviewing the final reports, surrounded by evidence boxes and digital forensic summaries that painted a disturbing picture of how the royal family's privacy had been systematically compromised for commercial gain. The breakthrough in the case came when digital forensics experts successfully traced the encrypted communications that had connected Chen with his mysterious contact, London's source. The trail led to a 42-year-old former royal household employee named David Hartwell, who had maintained access to scheduling information through contacts still working within various royal residences. Hartwell had been selling this information to photographers and tabloid journalists for over 2 years, earning what investigators estimated to be more than £200,000 from his insider knowledge. Hartwell's arrest sent shockwaves through the royal household, as it represented the first confirmed case of a former employee systematically betraying confidential information for financial gain. The investigation revealed that Hartwell had been dismissed from his position as a junior administrative assistant 3 years earlier for unrelated disciplinary issues, but had maintained friendships with current employees who unknowingly provided him with scheduling details during casual conversations. The legal proceedings against both Chun and Hartwell became a landmark case in British law regarding privacy rights and the protection of public figures' children. Chen's defense team argued that their client had been manipulated by more sophisticated criminal operators and deserved leniency due to his desperate financial circumstances. However, prosecutor James Richardson successfully argued that Chen's systematic surveillance of the school and his detailed documentation of security procedures constituted a serious threat to child safety that warranted substantial punishment. The trial attracted international attention, with legal observers from across Europe and North America studying the case's implications for privacy law in the digital age. The proceedings were conducted with unusual security measures, including the use of coded references to protect operational security details and closed sessions to review the most sensitive evidence recovered from the defendant's electronic devices. Marcus Chen ultimately pleaded guilty to charges of harassment, breach of privacy, and conduct likely to cause public alarm. His sentence of 18 months in prison, with 12 months suspended, reflected both the seriousness of his actions and the court's recognition of the financial desperation that had motivated his behavior. The judge, Mrs. Justice Elizabeth Carr, used her sentencing remarks to issue a strong warning to other photographers considering similar actions, emphasizing that the protection of children's privacy would always take precedence over commercial interests in photography. David Hartwell received a more severe sentence of 3 years in prison for breach of trust, conspiracy to invade privacy, and selling confidential information. The judge noted that Hartwell's actions had represented a fundamental betrayal of the trust placed in royal household employees and had potentially compromised the safety of multiple members of the royal family over an extended period. The palace's response to the incident evolved into a comprehensive review of security protocols and privacy protections for all royal family members. Private Secretary Simon Case commissioned an independent security assessment that examined not just physical protection measures, but also information security within royal households and coordination with external agencies responsible for royal protection. The security review revealed several vulnerabilities that had been exploited by the surveillance network uncovered during the Chen investigation. Information sharing between different royal residences had been inconsistent, making it difficult to identify patterns of unauthorized access or suspicious inquiries about royal family activities. Staff vetting procedures, while thorough for current employees, had not adequately addressed the ongoing security risks posed by former employees who maintained social connections within royal households. Catherine, Princess of Wales, took a personal interest in the reforms implemented following the incident. Having experienced intense media scrutiny throughout her relationship with Prince William, she understood the importance of establishing clear boundaries around her children's privacy while they were still young enough to be protected from the full weight of public attention. She worked closely with child protection experts and privacy advocates to develop guidelines that could serve as a model for protecting all children in public life. The incident prompted significant changes at Thomas's Battersea, which found itself reluctantly thrust into the spotlight as a symbol of the challenges faced by institutions educating high-profile families. Dr. Patricia Thornton implemented a comprehensive security overhaul that included enhanced coordination with law enforcement, improved surveillance systems, and stricter protocols for identifying and responding to suspicious activity in the surrounding area. The school's Board of Governors approved a significant increase in the security budget, funding new technology and additional personnel trained in threat assessment and child protection. The changes were designed not just to protect the royal children, but to ensure the safety and privacy of all students whose families might be targets for criminals, kidnappers, or aggressive media attention. Other elite schools across London and the United Kingdom began implementing similar security measures, creating an informal network of institutions sharing best practices for protecting high-profile families. The School Security Consortium, established 6 months after the Chin incident, became a model for international schools facing similar challenges in other countries. The media industry's response to the case was complex and sometimes contradictory. While most mainstream publications condemned Chin's actions and supported stronger protections for royal children, some argued that the harsh sentences and increased security measures represented an excessive restriction on press freedom. Industry associations worked to establish clearer ethical guidelines for royal family coverage, but enforcement remained inconsistent across different types of media outlets. The case had particular impact on the freelance photography industry, where Chen's story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of pursuing high-risk assignments without adequate legal protection or ethical oversight. Several professional photography organizations developed new codes of conduct specifically addressing the photography of children and families in public spaces, though critics argued that these voluntary guidelines were insufficient to prevent future incidents. Social media platforms found themselves under pressure to address the distribution of unauthorized images of royal family members, particularly children. The major platforms implemented new reporting mechanisms and automated detection systems designed to identify and remove such content more quickly, though the global nature of social media made enforcement challenging across different jurisdictions. The financial investigation into the unauthorized photography network revealed the substantial sums of money involved in trading royal family images. Hartwell's records showed payments from multiple tabloid publications and online gossip sites, demonstrating that the market for exclusive royal content remained lucrative despite official disapproval and legal restrictions. International cooperation became essential as investigators discovered that much of the unauthorized royal content was being sold through networks that operated across multiple countries. British authorities worked with law enforcement agencies in the United States, Australia, and several European countries to identify and prosecute individuals involved in the commercial exploitation of royal family privacy. The incident had lasting effects on the royal family's approach to public engagements and media relations. Prince William and Catherine became more selective about events where their children might be present, while also working to ensure that legitimate media coverage of royal activities could continue without compromising family privacy. The balance between public duty and private family life required constant recalibration as the children grew older and their public profile increased. Educational experts noted that the incident highlighted broader issues about children's rights in the digital age. The ease with which images could be captured, distributed, and monetized through online platforms created new challenges for protecting all children, not just those born into prominent families. The case became a catalyst for broader discussions about consent, privacy, and the commercial exploitation of children's images. The technological aspects of the investigation led to improvements in digital forensics capabilities within British law enforcement. The techniques developed for tracing encrypted communications and analyzing social media networks proved valuable for investigating other types of cybercrime and online harassment. The case became a training example for police officers and prosecutors dealing with digital evidence in privacy-related cases. Marcus Chen's personal story became a subject of ongoing interest for journalists and social workers interested in understanding how financial desperation could lead individuals to make destructive decisions. Chen participated in several interviews after his release from prison, describing his experience as a warning to others facing similar economic pressures. His case became part of broader discussions about social safety nets and support systems for individuals in precarious employment situations. The incident's impact on Prince Louis himself was carefully managed by child psychologists working with the royal family. At 5 years old, Louis had been largely unaware of the surveillance he had been subjected to, and efforts were made to ensure that he could continue attending school without anxiety about his safety or privacy. The experience reinforced the royal family's determination to provide their children with as normal a childhood as possible despite the unique challenges of their position. 5 years after the incident, the security measures implemented in response to Chen's arrest had become standard practice for royal family activities. The case was regularly cited in legal education as an example of how privacy law had evolved to address digital age challenges, while the sentences imposed on Chen and Hartwell continue to serve as deterrents to others considering similar actions. The broader investigation that grew from Chen's arrest ultimately led to more than 30 arrests and convictions related to unauthorized royal surveillance and the commercial exploitation of royal family privacy. The network that had been uncovered stretched across multiple countries and involved everyone from low-level photographers to senior editorial staff at major publications. The incident marked a turning point in how the royal family, law enforcement, and the media industry approached the challenge of balancing public interest with privacy rights in the 21st century. While the specific threat posed by Marcus Chen and his camera had been neutralized within hours, the questions raised by his actions continued to influence policy and practice years later. The story of that March morning outside Thomas's Battersea served as a reminder that in an age of instant global communication and commercial pressure for exclusive content, the protection of children's privacy required constant vigilance, sophisticated coordination between multiple agencies, and a clear understanding that some boundaries should never be crossed, regardless of the financial incentives involved.